Did you know that Jewish Zionist leaders collaborated with German Nazis to send Jews to death camps? Yep. I'm going to break this down for you a bit further. So in 1933, when Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, the German Zionist Party was not very popular at all. Zionism and the idea of a Jewish homeland was not at the forefront of Jewish thinking. But German Jewish Zionists saw the rise of Hitler as, and this is a quote from Burl Katznelson, David Ben-Gurion's deputy, an opportunity to build and flourish like none we've ever had or will have. Ben-Gurion, who became the first prime minister of Israel, said, "The Nazis' victory will become a fertile force for Zionism." These quotes are from Tony Greenstein's book, Zionism During the Holocaust. In fact, Zionists were discussing the Holocaust before it happened. This is a quote from Robert Seffer's book, 1666, Redemption Through Sin. So, the very first public mention of the word Holocaust in regards to World War II came as early as 1936 from the leader of Labour Zionism, Chaim Weizmann. While addressing the World Zionist Congress, Weizmann, who would later become Israel's first president, in 1936 made the following dreadful pronouncement: "Perhaps only 2 million Jews will survive the upcoming Holocaust." Yes, he used that word. "But they will be strong and good for the land of Israel. The rest will be blown into the dust pile of history." Okay. I continue quoting from Seffer. In 1932, how many organizations in Germany represented German Jewry? Over 250. And a lot of those were anti-Zionist, right? Not pro the Zionist Jewish state. In 1933, when Hitler becomes Chancellor, how many were there? One and one only: Labour Zionism. I continue quoting, Rothschild money and Jesuit power initiated the so-called Enlightenment. The final aim of the movement was to establish a Sabbatean Frankist state, I'll explain that term later, in the historical land of the Jews. To foment the idea, life had to become so intolerable for Europe's Jews that escape to Palestine would appear the best option. But was the plan a conspiracy theory, or is this conspiracy a documented fact? Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism, claimed that the establishment of a Jewish state would cure anti-Semitism, but he also promoted anti-Semitism to further his cause. In his published diary, Herzl boldly stated, "It would be an excellent idea to call in respectable accredited anti-Semites as liquidators of property. The anti-Semites will become our most dependable friends, the anti-Semitic countries our allies." The Israeli historian Benny Morris described how Herzl foresaw and calculated the covert ways in which anti-Semitism could be harnessed and exploited in order to further expedite the realization of the political goals of Zionism. He stated that Herzl regarded Zionism's triumph as inevitable, not only because life in Europe was ever more untenable for Jews, but also because it was in Europe's interest to rid the Jews and be relieved of anti-Semitism. The European political establishment would eventually be persuaded to promote Zionism. Herzl recognized that anti-Semitism would be harnessed to his own Zionist purpose. According to historian Christopher John Bejerknes, Jewish support was the only thing lacking in the Rothschilds' plan to establish a world government in Jerusalem, with a Rothschild ruling as king, right? Jews weren't interested in Zionism. I continue, they could bankrupt Egypt and Turkey, they could bring Russia to ruins, they could buy Jewish ne'er-do-wells, they could even buy the Pope. But the only way to force Jews in large numbers to Palestine was to put Hitler and Stalin in power and persecute Jews on a massive and unprecedented scale. Jewish author Barry Sheimish, who in the summer of 1982 fought in the Lebanon War for the Israeli Defense Forces and whose grandparents died in a concentration camp in Poland, published in his book that, "We now jump to 1933. Less than 1% of the German Jews support Zionism. Many tried to escape from Nazism by boat to Latin and North American ports, but the international diplomatic order was to turn them back. Any German Jew who rejected Palestine would be shipped back to his death." By 1934, the majority of German Jews got the message and turned to the only Jewish organization allowed by the Nazis, the Labor Zionists. For confirmation of the conspiracy between them and Hitler's regime, read The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black, Perfidy by Ben Hecht, or The Scared and the Doomed by Jacob Nuremberger. Can you imagine? According to Scheimisch, the deal cut worked something like this. The German Jews would first be indoctrinated into Bolshevism and Labor Zionism camps, and then, with British approval, transferred to Palestine. Under the 1935 Nuremberg laws, only 2 flags were permitted in Nazi Germany. One was the swastika, the other was the blue and white banner of Zionism. According to Lenny Brenner's book, Zionism in the Age of Dictators, the Zionist Party was the only other political party in Nazi Germany to enjoy a measure of freedom. Zionists and Nazis had a common interest that developed into a formal partnership, making Jews go to Palestine. The pro-eugenics Labor Zionists got the Jews they wanted by training them in farming in Nazi camps, and let the millions of Orthodox religious Jews, the ones against political Rothschild Zionism and other non-Frankists, perish in Europe, while their wealth was liquidated and transferred to the Labor Zionists. This is all covered in the book, The Transfer Agreement. So Zionist Jews did this to Jews who did not agree with Zionism. While non-Zionist European Jews were in mortal danger, Zionist leaders in America deliberately provoked and enraged Hitler. They began in 1933 by initiating their worldwide boycott of Nazi goods. Chaim Weizmann, the Zionist chief and later first president of Israel, said, "Every nation has its dead in its fight for its homeland. The suffering under Hitler are our dead." Rabbi Moshe Schonfeld accuses the Rothschild Zionists of collaborating in the Nazi slaughter of European Jewry directly and indirectly. He makes these charges in his book Holocaust Victims Accuse, which was published in 1977. Rabbi Schonfeld calls the Zionists war criminals for usurping the leadership of the Jewish people, betraying them to be slaughtered, and then reaping the moral capital from their own treachery. He states, "The Zionist approach that Jewish blood is the anointing oil needed for the wheels of the Jewish state is not a thing of the past. It remains operable to this very day." So I'm just going to read you that previous quote again. Zionist chief and later first president of Israel said, "Every nation has its dead in its fight for its homeland. The suffering under Hitler are our dead." How could Jews do this to Jews? This is me speaking, not quotes anymore. Collaborate in sending their own people to death camps, and all to bring about and populate the Zionist homeland in Palestine. Most Jews are unaware of the Illuminati agenda, which is also the Sabbatean Frankist agenda. This is a sect of Judaism which has its origins in a man called Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself to be the Messiah in 1666. Over 1 million Jews, half the world's population of Jews at the time, followed him, which is a large amount, and he claimed that redemption was available through acts of sin. Many saw his teaching as heresy and excommunicated him. After his death, a Sabbatean Jew called Jacob Frank succeeded him. I start quoting again from Robert Sefer's book, 1666, Redemption Through Sin. Jacob Frank, so this is me trying to explain to you how Jews could do this to Jews, and the difference between Sabbatean Frankist Jews and normal Jews. Jacob Frank asserted that God, the Creator, was different from the God who had revealed himself to the Israelites. He believed the biblical God was evil, a belief widely held in Gnostic circles, which I also believe. I think Yahweh is an inversion, okay? The only difference is where Frank separated himself was by rejecting every moral law and commandment, and declaring that the only way to a new society was through the total destruction of the present civilization. He insisted that child sacrifice, rape, incest, and the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable and necessary religious rituals. There's a lot to be said about the sect, so I really recommend reading this book because I can't go fully in depth here into their ideology of inversion. This sect follows the Babylonian Talmud. So originally Judaism was based on Moses' vision of God as a universal moral force. Judaism today is based on the Talmud, which consists of the interpretations of sages, Pharisees, during the Babylonian exile 586 BC to 1040 AD. Generally speaking, the Talmud contradicts the spirit of Moses and takes precedence over the Old Testament. It's an inverted text. It's Sabbatean Frankist in its core. Okay. Jacob Frank would eventually enter into an alliance formed by Adam Weishaupt and Mayer Amschel Rothschild called the Order of the Illuminati. The objectives of this organization was to undermine the world's religions and power structures in an effort to usher in a utopian era of global communism covertly ruled by their hidden hand, the New World Order. Using secret societies such as the Freemasons, their agenda has played itself out over the centuries, staying true to the script. Opposition is handled by a near total control of the world's media, academic opinion leaders, politicians, and finance. A fundamental part of the Illuminati's aim is to fulfill the Frankist plot of subverting the world's religions and the Zionist objective of instituting a global government which would be ruled by a king from Jerusalem. So the Sabbatean Frankist, Lurian Kabbalistic Jews are the root cause of what destabilized Germany, causing Hitler to want to expel the Jews. And they are the Zionist Jewish entity that collaborated with the Nazis in traumatizing the Jews and giving them the only option of settling in Palestine when they were under extreme danger and duress. So while we look at Palestine and we compare it to the Nazi death camps of World War II, the same Zionist entity is at the root of both of them.